and welcome to my talking hands today. I am actually making stitch markers for a stitch marker swap at SSK, and I had made a lot last year and I had never made them before and truly just thought the simplest method and they were nice. I love them. I'm actually going to reach out of here. I used beads that I had purchased on Amazon and just basically stacked them up using this kind of beading wire, I think is what it's called. Also purchased that on Amazon, so if you just search on Amazon for beading wire, you can find that. It's very flexible. I'm sure you've used a lot of stitch markers that have this. And then I learned something which I had never known before last year when I underwent this endeavor, and they're all about to go flying. What else is new? Was the word crimp beads. That's what keeps your beads on these wires, is these little crimp beads. See how far I can focus in on that. This one also purchased this on Amazon, and what you do is you put them on the top and the bottom of your beads, and you take one of those skinny plier things, whatever they call them, jeweler's pliers or whatever, and you just basically squeeze the crimp beads very hard and the beads stay on. And that's what I did last year, but this year I thought I would step it up a notch or two and try some new stitch markers or try some new methods. So I did some YouTubing, and this is what I found. A couple of the things that I found. This is the simple. I'm sorry if my dog is barking. Gosh, she's being so annoying today. These are the basic stitch markers that you see all over the place. And essentially what this is, let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go. It's a jump ring with a bead on it. And the bead, I always did wonder, how do you keep the bead over where the seam is in the jump ring? And I found that out, and I'm going to show you how I did that. So I made a bunch of these, which obviously you could use these just the way they are as stitch markers perfectly. But what I'm going to do and what I'm using them for, clearly they can be stitch markers, but like I said, I'm stepping this up a notch. So I'm making a bunch of these, and then what I'm doing is I am making, because this is my new favorite type of stitch marker, I am making, I guess they're called technically progress keepers. And let's see if I can get the camera to focus on this or pull it away. As usual, I'm having my normal focusing issues. There we go. So I've made this progress keeper and put the lobster claw clasp on the top. And the reason now when I even purchase them online, when I purchase stitch markers, why I purchase them with the progress keeper is because I have found that if you take the lobster claw clasp and you take a round plain stitch marker ring on it, it does double duty. So now it's either a stitch marker, or if you take the stitch marker off, or even if you just leave it on, you can use it as a progress keeper as well. So that's the direction I'm going in. That's what I've been sitting here making, because unfortunately I did not make it to Maryland Sheep and Wool this weekend. So instead of vlogging from there, I thought I would do a little tutorial and share what I'm doing here. This is another one that I've made. This also, I have the the stitch marker part of it on the top. There's the lobster claw, so you can take this off and use it as a progress keeper, and that's the little dragonfly. And what I just want to show also is this is the same way that I was making the stitch markers last year. So you can still make beautiful stitch markers the same way. Let's see if I can get this, give it a minute to focus. There we go. Is use the wire, and there's a crimp bead here on the bottom, and there's one over her little halo on the top. And that's keeping all of these beads from falling off, because what I also didn't realize is all these beads are separate. So I was clueless. So we're learning as we go. So I thought I would share and show you exactly how I learned to do these. So if you are so inclined or of the mindset, you can do this yourself. So I'm going to push these aside. And like I showed a few minutes ago, if you want to do just the ones with the wire, which to me actually is probably the easiest way to make them, you can use this beading wire. And if I find out, I will look up on Amazon. I'll try to even put the link below, because I bought this. It came in a set of all these different colors. This is all left over from last year. So, and I made a lot, okay? So this wire, you can make hundreds of stitch markers, and I have more colors here. So you need, these are some of the supplies you need. So I'm going to tell you, if you want to make the ones that are just stitch markers, the really simplest way to do it is with these wires. And let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. Oh, I can. That's it though. Okay, so you need wires. You also need some beads. These were actually a really good buy. I purchased these also on Amazon. The only thing I will say is that in this kit, there was one of these beads where it was horizontal, which would have been fine if the hole was in the center of the bead, but oops, just when it focused, right? But the hole is at the very end of the bead. Let's see if we can hold that still for a minute. And you'll see the hole is down here. So what I would say is, like, this compartment here, you can't really use for stitch markers. But any of these other ones, I've combined and gone, you know, larger from the bottom all the way up to the tinier ones on the top. So this box will make you a lot of stitch markers. That was last year. This year, we went a little bit different. So some of the supplies you need to make the ones I'm making today are, you need the jump rings, which are what makes these plain, literally just the plain beaded stitch marker. Okay, what I'm using is 10mm jump rings. And I'm going to take one out here and show you how the jump rings come. Some people, I guess, will just use the jump ring by itself. Here's why I would not recommend it. The jump rings come with this little split in it. I mean, that's obviously so that you can use them in jewelry and in whatever you're using, so that you can put things, decorative things on here. I'm sorry, you could see the glue, the cement. I've only cemented my fingers together twice, so I think I'm already ahead of the game today. But anyway, when you're using these as knitting stitch markers, ideally you want to cover that, because you don't want that to snag on your yarn. And even if I were to take my pliers and close that up, it's still going to snag. There's really no way to close that up completely. So the solution for that is to put a bead over that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So that's the first thing that you're going to need. Is you're going to need jump rings. They come bigger, they come smaller. The only thing I would say, and again, I didn't buy the very large ones, mostly because I don't knit with very, very large needles. I think this size stitch marker will fit up to a size 9 needle, if I'm not mistaken. I know it will fit at least up to an 8. I think this will fit up to a 9. Now, the beads that I put on here, and you will need some seed beads, you can use either a 6/0 bead or an 8/0 bead. Now, these are glass seed beads, and to bear in mind the 6/0 bead is actually larger than the 8/0. When it comes to beads, the higher the number, the smaller the bead. And the only thing I would say is you can use either size, a 6 or an 8, but if you use a 6, which would be a larger bead than I have here, it's going to eat up room into the ring, which means that it may not fit that size 9 needle. It may only fit up to a size 8 needle because you have a bigger bead taking up room. That's the only difference. If it doesn't matter to you, if you have size 6 beads on hand, I certainly wouldn't go out and buy size 8 beads. If you have 6s on hand, you could consider buying a larger jump ring. It's really all about what you use and what you want to make, and you know, the type of stitch markers you're looking for. So that's what you need for the first part. For the second part, you need, and you need first off, and I open this, so I'm going to try to turn this gently. You need head pins. Okay, and that's the piece. I'm going to take one of these out of here, I hope. Let's try without spilling a whole lot of them. We all know how handy I am. Okay, this is what's called a head pin. And basically what it is it's a piece of wire with almost like what looks like a pin head or a nail head. I'm trying to see if that will get a good shot of it on the bottom. That will hold your bottom bead. Okay, and if you get a bead that will hold on there, you can pile anything on top. At that point, you're golden. So you have to make sure that you buy them with a nail head big enough to hold at least that bottom bead. So you don't, in other words, you don't want to buy the tiniest nail head that you can. But again, if you want to use bigger beads, you're going to need a bigger nail head, which is fine. What you don't want is you don't want to buy one with a huge nail head on the bottom and then stick a tiny bead down there, because that's going to look kind of funny. So I got 2-inch, which refers to the length of the pin, and I think that makes, again, if you buy these and make your stitch markers too long, they're going to be very dangly, and some people may enjoy that, and that's fine. I don't particularly like when they're very, very long and very, very dangly. I find they get in my way. So the 2-inch in length nail head has been, pin head, head pin, whatever you call it, has been perfect for me. I've actually been cutting these down, and these are 5 centimeters. So actually I think it's 5 centimeters sounds like the length, right? I don't know. Well, it's 2-inch, 5 centimeter head pins. I'm going to show you, or try to show you this thing, so I'm going to zoom out anymore. No. We're going to zoom out. We're going to zoom in. What are we doing here? Okay. That's what the ones that I got. Okay, and there's 216 pieces in here, and I purchased these at Michael's. So only the first supplies that I showed you did I get on Amazon. I'm sure the rest of the stuff is available on Amazon, but I wanted to see it before I bought it just to make sure that it would all work. So that's the head pins that you're going to need. The other thing that you're going to need are lobster claw clasps, unless you only want to make stitch markers. In that case, you only need the jump rings. You don't need these lobster claw clasps. Again, like I showed, I like to have mine do double duty. So I found that when you use the lobster claw, you can make your progress keeper, and then simply by adding a ring onto the lobster claw, you turned your progress keeper into a stitch marker. So if you want to do it that way, then you need lobster claw clasps, and these two come in different sizes. And I believe, yeah, these are 12 millimeter, which to me is a really good size. Okay, they're not too big, they're not too small. They do come smaller, and they do come much, much larger. If you're knitting or crocheting in particular, obviously for crochet you need a progress keeper. You might want to look at the 14 or even the 16 if you're knitting with a thicker yarn. That may be something you want to consider. But for knitting purposes, particularly I knit mostly with fingering, occasionally with up to DK. And and worsted. I would probably use a 14 millimeter if I was going to use this unworsted, but I'm not. So 12 millimeter it is, so that you need those as well. So that's the lobster claw clasp. Oops, and then I knocked the camera over. Okay. The other thing you need is this. It's called GS. Let's see if they can get this to focus. Please focus for me nicely. No? Yes? It's GS Hypo Cement. And I like this because, there we go. There we go. It comes with a very, very thin tip, which now, just for spite, I am not going to be able to get this needle back in there to close it up. Oh boy. I can only say that this stuff comes oozing out of here like crazy pants. I've been keeping a paper towel here. I'm probably gonna have to like do some serious editing to cut that out. Okay, actually I got that on there. When you go to look for it, and again, I did get it in Michael's, it comes in a box. So don't try looking for this. You won't find it. It comes in a box. It's put out by Beadalon, who puts out a lot of these supplies. I don't think though, I actually bought the Beadalon and the other ones, but the Beadalon puts out this Hypo, GS Hypo Cement. It's very, very easy to work with, and it seems to be doing a very good job, and I'll show you what we use that for in a minute. I did make some dangly stitch markers. Okay, I wanted to, when I go to SSK, I wanted to bring a little bit of Long Island with me, so I chose some sea-themed or ocean-themed stitch charms to put on my stitch markers. These are not progress keepers. I just put these onto the beaded ring and made stitch markers out of them. So if you want to do that and just put some charms on, you can purchase any kind of charms that you like and put them on the rings, or put the lobster claw on there. That's up to you. Actually, I don't know that you can use these with the lobster claw because the lobster claw part isn't open. You would put these charms onto the ring before you close the ring up. So this would be just for stitch markers. So if you're in the market for just plain stitch markers with a little dangly charm on it, then you would need to purchase some of the charms. Now for the beads. I went a little crazy because Michael's had a really big sale on all of these. And these are just different beads that you can use in your stitch marker making. Okay. This came on a string of it basically was a bunch of beads that formed a dragonfly. It came with the dragonfly wings. I bought some butterflies, which I'm going to put together with these crystal beads that I got, and probably also some of these sparkly pink beads, and I may actually, I purchased these green beads. That's not green. These green beads to go with the butterfly, because I think that the pink and the green look really nice together. And if you look real close in the in this thread here with the green, in between there are some white beads also. These are all separate. And if you look also between the butterflies, there are these, oh gosh, what do they call them? Two beads? Bugle beads. I think they're called bugle beads, but don't quote me on it because, like I said, I'm so out of my wheelhouse right now. I could be making every bit of this up. Here are some other ones of the one I purchased. And I think a lot of these, I don't know, the red and the green were different prices, but I think like the strand was like $1 and change for one kind. It was $2 and change for another. So they really were not expensive. I got these really pretty blue ones to go along, and you can mix and match, but that's what you need. And again, what I would suggest doing is, if this is something you want to do or something you enjoy doing, I got these little tiny ones which I'm hoping fit on the nail head, because I don't think these will fit on the jump rings. I did find out that the ones that came on the thing with the dragonfly, This actually came with 2 more beads, but I thought that was going to make the stitch marker too long. Like I said, I don't like them when they're dangling so far that they're really interfering with my work. So I have those 2 beads left over, and I'll just use them for something else. But what I suggest is keep an eye out at Michael's. Obviously use your coupons and collect your beads, and you'll have a bead stash in no time flat. And then you can make all your fun stitch markers. So let's dive in. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to show you how to do is make the jump ring, which actually is, oh, let me just move this all out of the way here. I'm going to take these, I'm trying to keep them on the wire that they came on, because we all know if I don't, where they're going to all end up. Okay. These are the extra beads that came that do not fit on anything. So we're going to put those to the side. All right, so here's my jump ring. And I'm going to give a second for the camera to focus. And what I'm going to do is I am going to find where the jump ring is not connected, the open place on the jump ring. Okay, and I am going to take, I don't have 2 of these, I don't know what you call these needle thingy pliers, but what you need is 2 pliers essentially. So I'm going to hold the ring on one side of that opening with 1 plier. Okay. And I'm going to take this kind of plier and hold it on the other side of the ring. And again, I'm going to give the camera a chance to focus, which I hope it will, so that you can see. Okay, I'm back. So clearly, not only did I need to learn how to focus, but I needed to learn when to tell that your memory card is full. Okay, so here's your jump ring. And you are going to grab either side of the opening, just like that. And you're going to pull equally in opposite directions. So what you're going to do is open it, but not by pulling it apart or not by twisting it. So you're going to pull one side forward and one side back, just to create that little opening right there. Okay, and then I'm actually going to hold it with my larger pliers so that the opening is to the front. Here we go. And I'm going to pick up a bead. Okay. All right, and again, well, I was going to pick up a bead. Okay. Now we're playing hopscotch with the bead. Okay. I can't see what I'm doing. All right, here's my wire opened up. Here's my bead, and I am going to just, and this is kind of a little tricky, slip the bead on to the wire where it's open. I may actually have to open this one up a little bit more. I don't think I opened it enough. So again, we're going to put these 2 together just like that, one opposite the other, and pull one forward, one back, just to open it enough to slide this bead onto the wire. Okay, gosh, this is, there we go. Okay, and then we're going to let the bead dangle down, just like that. And then I'm going to take my 2 pliers, like this, and I'm going to close this up as best I can. You know, just close it as closely to leave as little seam as you can. Let's see if you can see that there. I put my phone back there because it was actually helping me to focus a little bit. Let's see. There we go. I don't know why my daughter is yelling, but let's see if we can get that to focus. But anyway, the seam is up here. It's closed pretty well. It's going to take me longer to edit than it is going to be to make like 400 stitch markers. Okay. Is it gonna focus? There we go. Okay. Yay. All right, so you can see the seam. But again, it's closed pretty well, but we don't want that to snag on our knitting. So I'm going to slip the bead below that, just like that. And this is where our glue is going to come in handy. And I'm working over a paper towel, and I'm actually going to move my phone out of the way at this point because knowing me, it will be covered in cement in about 2 seconds. So I'm going to take this GS Hypo Cement, and right where that mark is, right where that separation is in the jump ring, I'm going to put, and this applicator is great, just a little bit of that cement, and then I'm going to take the bead and I'm going to slide it up right over the separation, just like that. Okay, and I'm going to leave it for a second or two. Now there is a big blob of glue there. First of all, that glue will dry clear. As you can see in my other ones, it doesn't even show. And ultimately, I'm trying to look and see if you can find one that you can't even really, you can't see it on any of them. It will thin out and it will dry completely clear. You won't see it. And that bead is going to hold. Okay, so now you have your snag-free stitch marker. That's perfectly fine. That's if you want to make these, you know, and to be honest, there's a lot of times, particularly when I'm doing lace, when these are the stitch markers I want to use, they're very thin, so there's no ladders, there's no gaps in my stitches. So a lot of times these are the stitch markers that I would prefer anyway. So that's in and of itself, that's a great way to make a stitch marker. So I'm going to put this one off to the side to dry, and I have a little paper towel here. I'm actually going to lift up the camera and I'm going to show you. I have a little paper towel and I'm laying it on there to dry. And I'm going to close up my glue, and I will be back in a second when my dogs start barking and I've closed up this glue. I will be back in a second and I will show you then how to make the progress keepers. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So this is the little ring marker that we just made a few seconds ago, and you can see the glue is definitely not dried yet, clearly. But that's the one we just made, and I'm going to leave it here to dry, and we're going to move on, and I'm going to show you how to make the progress keepers. So I have here one of the nail heads, or what do they call these again? Head pins. Okay, and I am going to take, and again, this is from these pre-strung beads that I purchased at Michael's. And you can use any beads that you like that fit onto the head pin, and you can use them in any order that you like. If I had them open, I would open more. Actually, you know what? Maybe what we could do, instead of using something that's pre-made, maybe we could open up and try using some of these beads and see how this comes out. And again, I will try to link, if they still have this available on Amazon, I will try to link below. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our head pin like this, obviously with the pin part, the flat pin part on the bottom, and we're going to stack up some beads. Now, with any luck, this will be the right size. Okay, and you can see what I was talking about before. This size is perfect for this bead. The bead is not going to come off. Okay, it's on there. The hole is small enough and the little flat head is big enough to hold it on there, but it's not so huge that all you see on the bottom is that flat metal piece. I don't know if you could really see it from here, but you could actually see the bottom of the bead. So we're going to stack up some beads in a combination that looks pretty. So let's see. We have a, what color is that? I don't know. Was that like green, sort of? So how about maybe some blue, a blue one. And again, this kit came with different size and I think 2 different shapes of beads. And I'm completely out of the camera here. And we're just going to stack up the beads. Okay, and you can put as many or as few as you like. How about we do 3? Let's not get too crazy. And I'm going to take this elongated pink one, like that. Okay, and because we don't need a crimp bead on this one, we're fine. Okay, because I'll show you how we're going to close this off. We can put, and I don't think, let's see if this will fit on here. This is again one of the leftover beads from the string of beads that I used to make the dragonfly, but I don't know if this will fit on the pin head. I know it didn't fit. Oh, it did. Oh, look. Okay, so we got one more on there. And again, you can make these any colors, any beads, any shapes, anything that you like. You can stack on here. And again, for my personal taste, I wouldn't make them too long, but you can make them as long or as short as you want. You can make them 2 beads. If you're a sock knitter and you want to make this very small, you can just put 2 beads on there. But we're going to leave these 4 beads on. And what I'm going to do now, you can see I have a lot of excess here on this pin, which is good because if you had a large bead, if you did want to use a heavy bead, I mean, you want to leave yourself a little bit of extra room there. So what I'm going to do, and I forgot to mention when I said your tools, you need a wire cutter. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of eyeball this and cut off the excess with the wire cutter, which is going to make it easier for me to bend my wire. So there we go. We're going to cut that off. And before I put the lobster claw on, I am going to begin to bend my wire here. Now, this takes practice, and I don't have a lot of practice with this. So if you're a jewelry maker or if you've done jewelry making, chances are you're going to be able to do this a lot better than me. But what I do is I start by bending this top part a little bit towards me, or opposite the direction I'm going to bend the wire, because then I'm going to bend the wire, and the goal here is that you want to keep this as straight as possible. And I think I'm actually going to cut a tiny bit more off of the end of this. I think there's just a little too much wire on here. So we're going to cut a little bit more off. So we're going to bend the wire, and you just really want to keep this as straight as possible. I'm going to take these and I'm going to loop it around till it's almost closed. Like that. All right, and I'm going to try to keep this straight. Close it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to take my lobster claw finding, and there's a hook on the bottom of it, and I'm going to slide that right onto the end there. And then all I have to do is close this up, keeping that clasp out of the way. And you want to close this obviously all the way so that your beads will not be sliding up and down, and also that your lobster claw isn't going to come off. So we're going to really tighten this as best we can and close it up. Now that's where I said experience kind of comes in, because you also don't want your stitch marker to hang crooked. And if you bend this, like you see how it's like kind of a little crooked. Now that may not bother some people, but that kind of would, and I'm not really picky usually, but that would irritate me. I don't know why. So it's just a matter of then playing with the wire, and you're going to straighten the wire out and close it up and back and forth until you can get the wire closed. And here, let's stay in the camera frame here, and get this as straight as possible. And you've made a progress keeper. And there we go. And again, you can make them as fancy or as simple as you like. Now, if you're really concerned, I personally think this is fine. I don't think this is going anywhere. Again, I'm like ridiculously picky with this, so I'm going to straighten this out a little bit more. If you think for any reason that this is going to open, or you're afraid of it opening up, you can drop a bit of that cement into that spot right there, that opening, and that will close it right up and seal it up, and it's not going to go anywhere, and neither is the clasp. So there's a progress keeper. Okay, and again, you can hang any beads you like on it. And what I would do then, you can use this as a progress keeper, or you can take a matching, coordinating, not coordinating, doesn't matter, put one of the stitch markers that you made, or any stitch marker that you use or have, on the top, and now you've turned your progress keeper into a stitch marker. Okay, so I'm going to show one more way to do this, which to me is the easiest way to do this, and this is how I did them last year, is with this beading wire. All right, you don't have to measure, you just cut off a nice chunk of the beading wire, because the truth is you're going to be able to trim it down to whatever size you need. So for that, you also need, and I don't know where I tossed them, the crimp beads. And I will try to link all of this where I got, again, this stuff I purchased on Amazon. Everything else came from Michael's. So here's my wire that I've cut off a piece using pink. And I am going to take out 2 of these crimp beads. And I'm going to just dig in here because they fell in. But I want the silver ones. Oh, the heck with it. Let's just go over to silver and dig them out. Okay. So I'm going to need one for the top and one for the bottom. So that's 2 crimp beads right there. Okay. And word to the wise, because we all know I did it, there's an empty spot right here. That's there for a reason, so that when you swing this thing around and you go to open up the crimp beads, when you want to close it, yeah, swing it back over here. Otherwise, you've got a big cleanup job. Ask me how I know. Okay, moving right along. I purchased this at Michael's. Okay, again, they were on one of these cards. You can buy a whole bunch of different designs, different kinds. These were pink angels. I saw pink, I saw angels, and it was all over. So these are actually, which I didn't realize until I went to first take them off. Let's see if I can get myself into focus. Focus seems to be a real problem for me. There we go. Okay. These are actually all separate. Okay. So I'm leaving them on the wire, and I'm only taking off one set at a time. So I'm going to lay those beads down here. All right. So those are the beads that I'm going to need to make the angel, and I'm going to set the extras aside. Then what you do is you're going to take your wire that you've cut. All right. You're going to fold it in half. You know, just get the ends as close as you can to the same size, only because that's just going to make it easier to slide the beads on. It doesn't really matter. This end is going to get cut off in the end anyway. So here's my 2 ends together. All right. And I am going to slide one of these crimp beads onto the wire. And for some reason this wire, I may trim this because it's actually a little bit too long to handle. So let's just trim that off and make it a little easier. Okay. So we're making a loop out of the wire. like that. And here are the two ends down here. And I'm going to hold those two ends together, and what I want to do is I want to take one of these crimp beads. Where'd it go? Oh, my nail. That's great. Okay. And I want to slide both ends of the wire into that crimp bead and slide it up the loop. Okay. So let me take a little doing, but there we go. Okay. Now, this is not 100% necessary. Some people don't mind if their beads move around. I do. It drives me crazy. So I only got one leg in there, so we're going to just stick the other piece of the wire in there. There we go. Okay, so that's a crimp bead. You can see already it's forming a stitch marker. Okay, so now I'm going to put on, in order, reverse order, the beads that make the angel. So here's her halo. I'm going to slide that on through both ends of the wire. Okay, and again, we're working from the bottom end, and I'm going to slip her halo on. And you want to make sure that both pieces of the wire are going through. So I'm going to hold this down a little closer to the end. There we go. All right, that popped on. And here's her little head. So we are going to pop both ends of that. I know the door is opening and closing there. Working outside, I think, trying to get done before the rain. Okay, so we pop that bead on. So essentially, whatever beads you're stacking, you're going to be putting them on in reverse order. Whether they're plain beads or decorative beads, or like this one just happens to form an angel bead, whatever you want, you're just going to keep on putting them all on. Okay, and this is the body. This is the last of the beads. Okay, now I had cut down my wire, so I don't have too much room to play with. I do not generally make my stitch markers very large because I don't tend to use very large needles. When I do a stitch marker swap, I do try to make some very large ones or larger size ones that'll fit up to like a size 11 needle, because I do know some people that, you know, do like using those kind of needles. But generally speaking, I try to keep it to a size 9. Some of them I'll make a size 6 or smaller. Last year I actually made with just 2 little beads for sock knitting, because I can't stand using very large stitch markers on my sock knitting. Drives me crazy. So this looks like it's a, you know, like an average one. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that this will work for, I'm thinking, up to a size 6 needle. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the last crimp bead, the bottom crimp bead, which is going to fly away. Hold on. I got it. And we're going to put both ends again of the wire through there. And I could tell my thing moved here, got a little bit bigger, but that's okay. All right, so what we have here is we have a crimp bead on the top, we have our decorative beads lined up, and we have a crimp bead on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take my skinny pliers, I'm going to place it over that bottom crimp bead while I'm holding the top. That's going to keep it from pushing the beads down. If I did it the other way, the chance could be that the beads would fall off. I'd rather they got pushed down. We're going to have to do this again. But I'm going to just hold my finger there lightly. I'm going to put my pliers up to that crimp bead, and I'm going to squeeze it. Okay? And that's the purpose of the crimp bead, is that they tighten down. Okay? And now those beads are not going to come off. Okay? They're on there. They're on there good. Now, again, like I said, some people don't bother with the crimp bead on the top. You really don't have to, but this moving around would drive me crazy. So what I do with the crimp bead on the top is I push down so that my beads are all nice and tight, and then I put my plier, once they're pushed down, put my pliers over that crimp bead and give it a good squeeze. Okay? And now you can see my beads are not moving anywhere. They're on there nice and tight. They're not flying around. And there's a stitch marker. All right, and again, I really love the stitch markers with these wires because they're so thin that when you're using them, particularly on lace or fingering weight, they're not making a space or leaving a gap that ends up later on somehow being a space or a ladder in your work because of the stitch marker. So now you have these two little pieces of wire coming out of that bottom crimp bead, and because it's crimped and it's tight, you can take your wire cutters, go right up flush against that crimp bead, give a good squeeze, and they're gone. Now I'm just going to look a little closer because I think I can get that better. There we go. Helps to clean out your tools. You can go flush up against there, and there you go. Okay, so there's the angel stitch marker. Whoosh, she fell over. With the wire. Okay, here's the same stitch marker that I made with the lobster claw clasp on it. All right, which you can do. And again, I'm not too experienced yet at shaping that wire. So that just, I think, takes practice. Here is a stitch marker that I made. I think I showed you that I just put a little charm on it before I closed it up and put the bead on it. Again, here is our original, the first stitch marker that we made with just the bead covering the wire, which you can use by itself certainly. Before you put the bead on, once you open this up, this jump ring, that's when you can put your charm on. Okay, you would put your charm on, then you would close it up like I showed you, put the bead on. I'm sorry, you put the charm on, put the bead on, close it up with your pliers, put the glue on, and slide the bead up, and you end up with a little stitch marker with a little charm. Okay, so that's, and this is the other one. This is the one that we made with just the beads dangling on it. Very pretty. And put the stitch marker, the plain stitch marker on the top. So this is either a progress keeper or a stitch marker. So if that's something you're interested in doing, I hope this was helpful. Again, I'm really sorry. I was really hoping to vlog from Maryland Sheep and Wool, but couldn't get there this weekend. Yeah, it was another one of those weeks. So I decided to spend this weekend working and looking forward to SSK, and I thought I would make some stitch markers. And I figured as long as I had my stuff out and was learning myself how to do this, I thought why not bring you along and show you how I was doing it, and maybe y'all could leave some tips underneath if you have a different way or a better way or have a good way of bending the wires or any tips or tricks toward making stitch markers. That would be great. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great rest of the weekend, and I will see you soon. Happy knitting!